In a world where silence carries more weight than words, and where every soul walks a path written by its own choices, there lived a man whose story was not meant to be remembered, not because he was forgotten, but because he was feared. He was not a king. He commanded no armies. He built no kingdoms. And yet, his name traveled farther than the wind, because wherever he walked, death followed. No one knew exactly when it began. There was no single moment, no clear turning point, only a slow descent, a quiet surrender to something darker. At first, it was hesitation. Then it became easier. Then it became nothing. A life taken, then another, until the weight of it no longer felt like weight at all. And so he continued, not as a man driven by rage, but as one emptied of feeling. 1, 10, 20, 50, until the number reached 99. 99 souls, 99 lives, each one carrying dreams, families, stories, now reduced to silence. And still, he lived, but something had changed. Not outside, inside, because even in the deepest darkness, there exists a whisper, a quiet voice that refuses to be silenced. At night, when the world fell into stillness, and even the wind seemed to hold its breath, he would sit alone, no enemies, no fear, no sound, only himself, and the silence. At first, it meant nothing, but slowly, that silence began to speak, not in words, but in weight, a heaviness pressing against his chest, a presence he could not escape. And then one night, the question came, soft, fragile, almost afraid to exist. Is there any way back? He did not know where the thought came from. It had no place in the life he had lived, no place in the man he had become. And yet, it remained. It followed him. It grew louder with every passing day, until he could no longer ignore it. For the first time in his life, he was not searching for someone to kill. He was searching for an answer. He walked into a village, a place where people still believed in goodness, in prayer, in hope. They saw him and stepped aside. Fear was something he understood. It was familiar, but this time, he did not feed on it. He ignored it, and instead he asked, "Who is the most knowledgeable among you?" The people hesitated, but eventually someone spoke. "There is a man, a monk devoted to worship. He lives apart from a world. If anyone knows, it is him." And so he went. The journey was not long, but every step felt different. He was not chasing. He was not hunting. He was seeking. When he reached the monk, he found a man unlike himself, a man whose life was built on devotion, on prayer, on purity, two worlds standing face to face, the killer and the worshiper. For a moment, neither spoke, and then the man broke the silence. "I have killed 99 people." The words fell heavy in the air, unapologetic, unhidden, truth in its rawest form. Then he asked, "Is there any repentance for me?" The monk looked at him, and what he saw was not a soul seeking redemption, but a man defined by his sins. Fear entered his eyes. Judgment followed, and without hesitation, he answered, "No, there is no repentance for you." The words were sharp, final, unforgiving, and in that moment, something inside the man shattered, not because he was denied forgiveness, but because the last hope he carried was taken from him. And so, he returned to what he knew, what he had always known, violence. In a single moment, the monk fell, and the count became 100. 100 souls, 100 lives, 100 endings. And yet, the question did not die. It remained, stronger than before. Is there any way back? Because even now, even after crossing the darkest line imaginable, something within him refused to give up. And so, he searched again. He asked again, "Who is the most knowledgeable among you?" This time, the answer was different. There is a scholar, a man of understanding, a man who knows not only worship, but the mercy behind it. And so, once again, he walked. But this journey felt heavier, not because of distance, but because of truth. He was no longer just a man who had sinned. He was a man who had tried and failed, a man who had killed even in his search for redemption. When he reached the scholar, he stood silently, as if unsure whether he even deserved to speak. But eventually he did. "I have killed 100 people." A pause, a breath, and then, "Is there any repentance for me?" The scholar looked at him, but unlike the monk, he did not see a monster. He saw a man standing at the edge of transformation, a man asking not for escape, but for a chance. And so he answered, "And who stands between you and repentance?" The words were simple, but they carried something the man had never heard before. Possibility. Of course, there is repentance for you. In that moment, something changed. Not outside, inside. For the first time in his life, he felt hope. Real hope. Not imagined, not distant, but real. And then the scholar spoke again. "But you must leave this land, for it is a land of evil. Go to a land where people live in righteousness, worship with them, and do not return. Because repentance is not a word, it is a journey." And so the man turned, not back, forward, toward a place he had never seen, toward a life he had never lived. The journey was long, the desert stretched endlessly before him. The sun burned, the wind resisted, and his body grew weak. But he did not stop, because for the first time, he had something worth walking toward. Every step he took carried meaning. Every breath carried intention. Behind him was a life of darkness. Ahead of him, a chance at light. But the past does not release easily. It followed him, in memories, in shadows, in whispers, 100 voices, echoing behind him, reminding him of who he was. But he continued, because now he knew who he could become. And somewhere, between the land he left and the land he sought, his strength began to fade. His steps slowed. His breath grew heavy. The distance remained, and time was no longer on his side. Then it happened. He fell, alone, in the middle of the desert. No witnesses, no voices, no second chances. His journey ended, or so it seemed, because as his final breath left his body, another reality began. The unseen world came alive. The angels descended, beings of light, beyond human understanding. Two groups, two purposes, the angels of punishment and the angels of mercy, each claiming the soul. "He belongs to us," said the angels of punishment. "He took 100 lives. He never performed a single good deed." But the angels of mercy responded. "He came seeking forgiveness. He left his land. He was on his way to change." And so, a dispute arose, not of anger, but of justice. And then, a third presence appeared, an angel sent to judge between them. He spoke with authority, measure the distance between the land he left and the land he was heading toward. If he is closer to the land of righteousness, then he belongs to mercy. And if he is closer to the land of evil, then he belongs to punishment. And so, they measured. Every grain of sand became part of the decision. Every step he had taken held weight, and the result was closer than anyone could have imagined. He was closer to the land of righteousness by a distance so small it could barely be seen. But it was enough, more than enough. And so, the angels of mercy took his soul. A man who had taken 100 lives was forgiven, not because of what he had done, but because of what he chose in the end, because he turned, because he walked, because he tried. And sometimes that is enough, because no matter how far a person falls, no matter how deep the darkness becomes, the path back is never fully closed. Not as long as there is breath, not as long as there is movement, not as long as there is even a single step toward the light. And perhaps that is the greatest truth of all, that mercy is not reserved for the perfect, but for those who seek it, even at the very end.